Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Kim Curtis, president of the Grandview Chamber, and we'd like to welcome all of you here today and really appreciate the representatives from MARC to talk about sustainability for our workplaces, our communities. You know, we've all been through the most interesting year of our lives, and we just thought this would be a good topic to bring to folks to talk about. You know, we've had to redefine really everything we know how to do, and what are ways that we can sustain ourselves into the future with some of the lessons learned, with some of the past history as well. So again, thank you all for attending, and I'd like to introduce my colleague, Vicki Walgast, from the South Kansas City Chamber.
Good morning. Thank you, Kim. We're excited to be here, and how appropriate that today is Earth Day, given our topic.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So we'll begin this morning. I'm going to introduce our first speaker. We're going to introduce all of our speakers, and then we'll let them take over the presentation and give us all their knowledge. Our first speaker this morning is Matt Riggs. He's the outreach coordinator with Mid-America Regional Council Solid Waste Management District. Matt coordinates regional recycling education initiatives such as recyclespot.org, the Recycle More at Work Partnership, and the Recycling Hotline. He also coordinates the Kansas City Environmental Education Network, the MARC Green Team, and is chair of the Climate Action KC Student Action Committee. He has an alter ego by the name of Eco Elvis, which I hope might get to see, which he uses to edutain people about taking care of the environment.
Great, and it's my privilege to introduce Doug Norsby, Air Quality Program Coordinator 3 for MARC. Since 2009, Doug has managed the public education and outreach efforts conducted by the Air Quality Program at Mid-America Regional Council. The program works with local government agencies, businesses, fellow nonprofits, and the general public to raise awareness about the importance of air quality and the actions which everyone can take to improve it. He has also been the regional liaison for sustainable downtown planning in Edgerton and Gardner, and led the development of the regional greenhouse gas inventory and modeled associated GHG reduction strategies. So welcome, Doug.
And finally, we have Natalie Phillips. She's the Rideshare KC Outreach Coordinator for MARC. Natalie connects area employers and commuters with transportation solutions, promoting alternatives to driving alone. She coordinates Mobility KC, a local coalition of transportation providers under the Ride KC umbrella, as well as the MARC Environmental Outreach Group. She has also aided in the development of the Greater Kansas City Climate Action Plan with Climate Action KC. I'd like to welcome all of our speakers and remind everyone that we will be taking questions through the Q&A. So if you have a question at any time, feel free to put it in there. And then when we get to a good break, we will get those questions answered. So welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Vicki.
All right. Well, good morning, almost afternoon, everyone. As they said, my name is Matt Riggs. I'm the outreach coordinator here for the MARC Solid Waste Management District. And I'm going to be kicking off today's presentation. Next slide. So for those of you who aren't familiar with MARC, we're the Mid-America Regional Council. We're a nonprofit association of local city and county governments. And we're also designated as the Metropolitan Planning Organization for the bi-state Kansas City region. We're governed by a board of directors made up of local elected officials. We serve the 9 counties that you see on the right and all 119 cities within those counties. And basically what we do is we provide a forum for the region to work together to advance social, economic, and environmental progress. We promote regional cooperation and development of innovative solutions through leadership, planning, and action. Next slide. So MARC, we work on a very wide range of programs and initiatives. But today's presentation is going to be given from the perspective of our programs which address both healthy environment and a healthy community. So the specific areas we'll be focusing on, especially later when we go into how we can help you out, will be recycling, protecting our air and water quality, and next slide, and utilizing alternate forms of transit other than single occupancy vehicles. Next slide. So our goal today is to provide you with simple steps for creating a culture of sustainability by focusing on your people, planet, and profits. Because these three areas really are the cornerstones of sustainability and the cornerstones of successful business in the 21st century. Next slide. So this is just a brief overview of the topics we're going to cover. With the recent release of the Climate Action Plan and adoption by the MARC board, we're going to start with climate risks and impacts, just to provide you a framework for sustainability. Then we'll outline, or then we'll define sustainability, what it means to your business. Then we'll outline the ingredients for creating a successful culture of sustainability at your workplace. And lastly, we'll provide simple steps, basically how we can help you get there. So now I'm going to hand it over to Doug Norsby, our Air Quality Program Coordinator, and he's going to kick things off with climate risks and impacts. Doug?
Thank you very much, Matt. Yes, I've been with the Air Quality Program at MARC for a little over 10 years, and we've come a long way. Go ahead and next slide. Just really quickly, for those of you who aren't aware of it, we have done a regional greenhouse gas inventory, which shows that about 2/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings, and 1/3 come from transportation sector. There's also a small but important component from the waste sector. These greenhouse gas, it's a range of gases. Most familiar is the CO2, but they are causing our climate to be more volatile than it has been in the past. Next slide. In the way that represents itself is more frequent and stronger thunderstorms that are just more powerful. They have more energy. They're more destructive. Odd snowfalls like we had earlier this week. Tornadoes that are particularly large and devastating. The Linwood tornado that we had a couple years ago is a good example. And then we have problems with flooding and drought, paradoxically. They will kind of alternate and heat. So those things are kind of, they'll affect us over a long period of time, and they have a significant consequence, particularly on the vulnerable people in our community. So we've done some analysis, and we've identified people who are kind of on the front lines of feeling the effects of climate change, and that would be people who could be in flood-prone areas or may have lack of ability to get to cooling centers and that kind of thing. So these climate disproportionately affects people, and we have to work as a group, as a social unit to protect everyone, no matter what their situation is. Next slide. So just going to flip through a few things that unfortunately probably look all too familiar. So these events that you've seen again, they've had impact on people. They've had impact on our businesses. They have caused health and safety problems. They've been very expensive in terms of cleanup and costs of utilities. So it's very disruptive. And so what we want to talk about now, this is context, but we want to reach out to you with a message of hope and what we can do about it. How can we be more adaptable, more resilient, and how can we build things in such a way that we can adapt as changes are required. Go ahead, next slide. So to get into that, I'm going to introduce Natalie Phillips. She's our Rideshare KC Employer Outreach Coordinator, and she's going to talk more specifically about how people, profit, and planet are all interrelated. Go ahead, Natalie.
Great, thanks so much, Doug. My name is Natalie Phillips. I'm the outreach coordinator for the Rideshare KC program, and that basically means that I try to connect employers and commuters with sustainable alternatives to driving alone. Now, Doug did a really great job of kind of setting the scene for us, where we learned a little bit more about some of the ways that these climate impacts are going to play out in our everyday lives. We're already seeing these impacts in our day-to-day with extreme, swings in temperature and weather. So the question then is, what are our next steps, and how can businesses actually approach these risks and be more resilient for the future? So sustainability is, of course, the answer. It's the way that an organization is going to be able to sustain through these climate risks. Sustainability is really about meeting the needs of the present without compromising future generations to meet their own needs, who need to meet their own needs. So essentially, it's really about finding a way of doing business that doesn't put undue harm on the environment and the communities around us. So an emerging definition of sustainability that's gained a lot of traction in the business community over the last 10 years is called the triple bottom line approach. Now, what this basically says is that our bottom line in business is inextricably linked to our environmental impacts and the way that we impact the people not only in our organization, but in our community more broadly. It's also not just an approach to our own bottom line and our own financials. It's kind of a holistic approach to doing business. It's really asking, what is the true cost of our organization, and how can we improve the impacts of our organization in a more holistic way? So the first aspect of this triple bottom line approach, it's kind of a three-piece setup. It's like a three-legged stool. And the first one we'll dig into is profit. When we talk about profit, of course, we're talking about our organization's profit, but we also want to think about profit in a more contextual way, social profit. How does our organization affect our local, regional, or national economy? Are we innovating or creating jobs, or even creating tax revenue, for instance? And sustainability creates a lot of opportunities in this area. There's kind of a misconception that I think has become a little outdated, that the green way is the more expensive way. But given that there's so much demand for green products and services over the last few years, that upfront investment just isn't the same as it used to be. It's a lot more manageable for businesses, and the ROI is a lot shorter. So some ways that you can immediately see direct savings and a direct impact on your bottom line are things like resource efficiency and waste reduction. And if there is an upfront cost to something like an energy efficiency upgrade, or hiring a consultant or something like that, there are also financing options that you can pursue through local and state and federal governments that can help close that gap. So a really great local example of an organization that saw pretty immediate savings due to a focus on sustainability is an affordable housing nonprofit called Westside Housing. They actually installed solar panels on 2 of their buildings, and they've been able to generate enough electricity on one of their buildings to power the whole building 100%. So of course the tenants are loving that because it's really reduced their utility bills. But it's also of great benefit to the organization because they can take the costs that they're saving and reallocate them to improve their facilities and improve the services that they provide. And consumers really want to buy green. There's a real appetite for green products. A Nielsen study, which is a consulting firm, found that 66% of consumers surveyed are committed to purchasing sustainable products. And they would actually pay more for a product if it was marketed as sustainable. So people are willing to pay a premium for this stuff. In addition, NYU's School of Sustainable Business found that between 2013 and 2018, 50% of growth in consumer products were sustainably marketed. So we're seeing higher rates of growth, and there's just a really strong appetite for it amongst consumers. An example of a local organization that has tapped into this demand is Postie Cards. They are a smaller greeting card company in the Kansas City metro area, but they've really garnered a local and national reputation for their commitment to sustainability. They have everything from renewable energy, energy efficient and green building upgrades to rain gardens and native plants. And they've really been able to incorporate it in their brand identity in a way that they're able to be sort of a leader in the business community and sustainability. And they've also tapped into some of that demand for green products where they are actually creating lines of sustainable greeting cards that have kind of an eco-friendly message and focus. So the other kind of cornerstone pillar of this triple bottom line approach is our people. And when we talk about people, we're not just talking about our employees, we're also thinking about our employees' families and our community, but also our stakeholders and our partners. So employing sustainability initiatives internally has a really strong impact on culture and morale, especially with things like green teams. It helps people find a common sense of purpose, and it creates camaraderie amongst different departments and potentially breaks down silos. And overall, you're really improving the quality of life for your employees at work. They're able to come to a healthier work environment. A great example of this is City of Kansas City. They have a pretty robust green team program. It's headed off by Laura Ish. And she's made the green team's focus really kind of about just having fun and connecting on a shared passion for the environment. She said that the way that it's grown and the way that she's been able to get traction is to just make it kind of an escape from work in a way that brings meaning into folks' day-to-day work days. So it's a great opportunity for connection and camaraderie. Recruitment and retention is also a really core part of this sort of three-legged sustainability stool. And we can see benefits in recruitment and retention through commitment to sustainability that can be felt not only in your organization internally, but it also impacts our region more broadly and makes our region more attractive to candidates. So 61% of workers that were surveyed in an HP survey, so they went ahead and surveyed all of their employees across the globe. They found that those workers are committed to sustainability and they believe that it should be mandatory for businesses. That same study found that 40% of workers would actually change jobs if they felt that their company was not being environmentally sustainable. So if a worker, according to this survey, feels that their job is having a negative impact on the environment, then there's a risk of turnover there. In addition, 2 out of 3 millennials would quit their job if they didn't find it fulfilling in some way, whether socially or otherwise. They need to feel like their job has some sort of ambition beyond profit. And this is according to a Deloitte survey. So sustainability initiatives internally are going to help you attract new talent who's motivated by these values and sees that you're committed to your role in the community, and hang on to the talent that you want. A really great example of this can be seen in BNIM. They are a local architecture firm, and they have garnered not just a local or regional reputation for being a leader in sustainability, but also a national and even international role. I mean, they are an absolutely pivotal leader in the space. And because of that, they're able to attract world-class talent to the Kansas City metro area with architects who are committed to sustainability in their career. Community engagement and equity is, of course, a huge piece of the sort of sustainability puzzle. We want to make sure that we're not harming the communities around us in our work. And committing to sustainability provides opportunities for more leadership and engagement in the community, and to even mitigate some of the impacts that your organization might potentially have on the surrounding communities. On the right-hand side, you'll see some photos that were provided to us by Hallmark. They have another really robust green team, a really great example of sustainable leadership in the Kansas City metro area. And you can actually see in the bottom right corner, there is a little community garden that they've created that the surrounding neighborhoods can access. So it's just a really great touch point and a way that you can kind of enmesh with the community around you and take care of the community. Another key part of our network is the stakeholders, vendors, and partners that we work with in our day-to-day. And a commitment to sustainability provides more opportunities for touch points where you're able to increase collaboration with stakeholders, and you're also pursuing a shared value with your partners. The ripple effect can be felt as well. If you're setting kind of standards for your organization to a certain standard of sustainability, then some of your partners will be adhering to that as well. So it's not just us, we're all very enmeshed in our professional networks, and the decisions that we make will impact the organizations around us. A really great local example of this is Kansas City Art Institute. They have just whipped a sustainability program into shape in the last few years. It's really amazing to see the progress that they've made. And one of the ways that they've done that is they've tapped into local relationships. So Kansas City Art Institute is right next to the Nelson Atkins Museum and the Kemper Museum. And it's this area that they're starting to call the museum corridor now. It's where kind of all the art museums and the art school is. And they kind of came together and said, hey, we all care about sustainability. We all want to make sure that the surrounding neighborhood is well taken care of. So they started pooling resources, and they built a coalition where they are working together to pursue shared sustainability goals across their different institutions. So you can get really innovative in the ways that you work with area organizations towards sustainability. And last but not least, of course, the last P in the triple bottom line approach is planet. And it's really the reason that we're here on Earth Day. We talked about some of the risks and some of the doom and gloom and some of the things that we're already seeing. But the question of how we take care of our planet is really a fundamental one. It's our home, and it's the air that we breathe and the water that we drink. So a great quote comes from Lady Bird Johnson that I think kind of sums up this approach to sustainability. The environment is where we all meet, where we all have a mutual interest. It is the one thing that all of us share. So with that, I will go ahead and pass it to Matt, and he's going to give us some great, simple, actionable ways that we can pursue sustainability at work.
Thanks, Natalie. So think of these as recipes for successfully building a culture of sustainability at your workplace. Next slide. So I want to start off by acknowledging that there are barriers. We've all experienced these, so none of the organizations present today, I'm sure, are immune from one or some of these types of barriers, and those can range from just red tape to silos. You know, this department doesn't have any, say in this, so don't bother us, or no communication between this department and that department, Maybe it's a lack of resources. You know, if you can't really do much if you don't have the time and money planned into your strategic plan or your budget. Just momentum. It's great to start a new program, but how do you keep that going? How do you keep your staff motivated? And then just lack of visibility. If nobody's telling staff about a certain initiative, then how are they going to know about it or participate? These next solutions are key to really helping to overcome some of these barriers. So first we're going to talk about the sparks. And when I say the sparks, it's that person at your organization who stands up and essentially asks, why? You know, why are we doing something this way, or why are we not doing something this way? So when it comes to sustainability, this person is not always, but is very likely a person who can help steer your organization down the sustainable path. So let's look at some of the sparks at the local entities we've been talking about. First off the bat is Hector Casanova. He is an assistant professor of illustration at Kansas City Art Institute. And he's kind of the one that started their sustainability movement. He was going to go recycle something one day, and he came across a recycling container. And on that container, it was written, "No cardboard recycling." So he's like, it's a recycling container. Why can't I recycle cardboard in it? So he brought this up at an all-staff meeting, and immediately fellow faculty and staff started voicing very similar concerns. Kind of like, yeah, what he said. So before the meeting was over, they had put together what would become their sustainability committee, and the Art Institute was on its way to a sustainable future. So in this case, it was a professor. Next slide. Another professor at KCAI, Jean Schmidt, she basically found out once they started asking questions that the potential is there. You have staff already in your organization that will support sustainability efforts and lend their energy and creativity. You just need to start asking questions. In other words, what Jean likes to say is you just have to be nosy. Next slide. So at the City of Kansas City, the spark started a little bit higher up the chain with former Mayor Kay Barnes. Back in 2005, she committed the city to participate in the Mayor's Climate Protection Agreement. And staff is in pretty wide agreement that this was the spark that really started the culture of sustainability that now pervades the City of Kansas City, Missouri. Next slide. At Hallmark, Lynn Benson was an early visionary. She was a librarian in their creative research library, but she was the first person at Hallmark who brought the higher ups' attention to a prediction from an industry magazine that sustainability essentially could no longer be ignored. It just can't be ignored. It's too big a thing. Next slide. Also at Hallmark is Emily Akins, who's been a linchpin in their sustainability efforts from day one. In her mind, it really does come down to individuals who have passion and the drive to make a positive change. And often that change goes company-wide, as it did at Hallmark. So now let's talk about some other things that are really key to creating a culture of sustainability at your workplace. First and foremost, you need executive buy-in. If your CEO or executive director doesn't care about sustainability, it's not going to go anywhere. And it always helps to have support from others at the top. So, you know, if it's a nonprofit, perhaps it's board members, vice presidents, department heads, there's definitely strength in numbers. Next slide. Another key, you need to have designated staff that actually get paid to oversee your sustainability efforts. It's great to have, you know, enthusiastic volunteers, but we guarantee that all sustainability efforts will be pushed to the bottom of the to-do list once their paid responsibilities take precedent. And that often is what we see when we work with different organizations and businesses. But the good thing is this position could take several forms. You could have a full-time sustainability coordinator or officer, or it could be someone who has sustainability oversight built into their a different job description. Next slide. Another key ingredient to success is forming a green team. This is often called a green team. It could be a sustainability committee. It could have basically any name you want to give it. But basically what it is a cross-departmental group of employees who voluntarily come together to identify and implement specific solutions that help your organization go in a more environmentally sustainable direction. The good thing about a green team is they really help break down the silos between departments. They educate, they inspire, they empower other staff people around sustainability. Now, two key components to forming a successful green team effort is you have to make it a formal committee. So they're most successful when they're organized as a formal committee and empowered by leadership to affect real change in an organization's policies and practices. You also have to make sure every department is represented. That way everybody's in the loop and no crucial department gets left out of the decision-making or planning process for sustainability. Next slide. Last, and perhaps the most important ingredient, is communication. The single biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it has taken place. I'm sure we've all experienced this. You don't know what you don't know, right? So let's look at some strategies that luckily you already have. These tools you already have in your toolkit for communicating to staff about other things. So why not use them for creating a culture of sustainability? So we'll start with some in-office tools. On the right side of your slide, you'll see the digital signage. Those are becoming pretty common in many workplaces. Then on the left side, you have the old-fashioned bulletin board. And then you can also have good signage, such as the Take Care of Our Air sign on the bottom. Great signage can be put up anywhere in your workplace where it's appropriate, and it can be a great way to raise awareness and start behavior change in your employees. And last but not least, you can add sustainability to your agenda at regular staff meetings. So if you have an update on sustainability, whether it's recycling or update on our solar panel installation, it helps keep that sustainability top of employees' minds. Next slide. There's also a lot of great digital tools. I mean, we live in a digital age, so why not take advantage of that? You can send regular email messages, texts, social media. You can use your website. Posting, frequently, maybe every 2 weeks or once a month on these digital platforms is really key to help keeping all your staff aware of your environmental initiatives. Now I'm going to hand it back to Natalie, and she's going to start talking about the simple ways that we can help you guys get there. So Natalie.
Thanks so much, Matt. So here at MARC, we have several environmental programs, but we also have quite a few partners that we would be happy to connect folks with. Here's sort of a little map of how our environmental programs are laid out. We cover most of your environmental concerns, transportation emissions, water quality, air quality, and recycling and waste reduction. That's kind of each of the worlds that we represent and come from. Now, to start off, the transportation emissions piece is the program that I represent. It's Rideshare KC, and we really strive for a more sustainable, interconnected, and mobile Kansas City region through working with commuters and employers. And we do this through several ways. First, we provide outreach and education just to make sure that commuters and employers have the tools that they need to access these different ways to work, whether you're trying to learn how to bike commute, which is a lot easier said than done, or just learning how to navigate the transit system. In addition, we also have consulting services that we can employ with various employers in the Kansas City metro area through things like surveying, mapping, one-to-one commuter interviews, things like that. We're really able to suss out some of your transportation pain points and make sure that everybody has a way to get to work. And lastly, we also do carpool matching, which is probably what we're most famous for if you've seen the little ride share signs on the highway. And we also provide a guaranteed ride home program for folks who need an Uber back home in an emergency. With that, I will go ahead and pass it to Doug, and he can chat a little about the air quality program.
Thank you, Natalie. Yes. Again, the air quality program, our focus is just to make that the regional air quality safe to breathe and that make it clean and safe and healthy. Go ahead and flip to the next one. In order to accomplish this, we focus primarily on ozone as the main pollutant of concern for our region. You may have heard about the ozone layer way up high with the effects of cancer and that kind of thing. It's good up high, but it's bad down below. If it's ground level ozone, it's being formed by emissions from combustion in vehicles or manufacturing processes, coal-based utilities, mixing with solvents and gasoline vapors and that kind of thing. Creates an oxidizing gas, which can damage your lungs. And so that's the one that we want to try to maintain, take care of. And so that's our focus. Go ahead and flip to the next one. To do that, we actually contract with meteorologists who study the development of ozone pollution in the region, as well as what is coming into our region from outside, to create a forecast. So it's a pollution forecast. It's called the Skycast. And we issue this every day during the ozone season from March 1st through October 31st of every year. If it looks like there is going to be elevated high levels of ozone that will exceed the national standard, we issue an ozone alert. And this may be something that you'll see on the light boards, the KC light boards over the interstate. You may hear about them on the radio, on morning and evening television. Whenever you hear those things, it means that there's going to be poor air quality the next day. You need to take care of yourself, look out for others who have some health problems, and then do what you can to limit the emissions that you're going to be producing during the next day. Go ahead and flip the. So to try to assist you with that, and this is the way that the businesses can get involved, we have the Air Quality Workplace Partnership. And when you sign up for that, we help make sure that you get your employees linked into the notifications with EnviroFlash. We usually work with a single company coordinator who then, it's kind of the knowledge transfer for your organization. But make sure that they get especially the ozone alerts. We also send out a monthly e-tip. It's fairly brief, but it has different events going on around the region. It may have tips on how to host a sustainable July 4th, or it may have different ideas for commuting, updates on new software plans or whatever else that are going on for rideshare. So it's good in a lot of different ways. We also identify some funding opportunities that'll come rolling around. But I encourage anyone who is not already signed up to do that. We also have idle-free zone programs that are specifically tailored to businesses. And the idea here is to try to reduce unnecessary idling by your employees, by members of the public who are visiting your business, or even in loading areas where you would want along the dock where your semis back up, you want them to shut down while they unload. And the idea is, again, to reduce idling emissions, which contribute to that ozone production. We also have a number of different tips in different areas. They're all available on our public-facing public education site, airqkc.org. That's again airqkc.org, and there I invite you to take a look and peruse some of those suggestions. With that, it's my turn to pass it on to Matt, who will bring us home.
All right, thanks, Doug. So for any of you who have recycling at your workplace or would like to get a program started, the Recycle More at Work program is designed to help you do just that, to expand and improve recycling at your workplace. It has several components designed to help you do this. The most important part is kind of establishing the baseline, which is what we do through a waste assessment. It really gives you kind of a readout on what you're doing and kind of a general direction where to go. It looks at things like leadership, how you'll fund the program, the different waste streams you have at your organization, infrastructure, do you have good bins? Do you have good signage? Logistics, how are things getting from point A to point B? How are you communicating about the program? And then further down the road, waste reduction, taking it to the next step. We close out the report or the waste assessment with a follow-up report, which spells out in a very linear fashion our recommendations for the next steps for you to take. It's very usable and can be done in small steps so you don't feel overwhelmed. And then once your program is up and running, we also provide the Recycling 101 presentation. Now this is geared more towards what employees can do at home. This could be an in-person or a virtual presentation. It's designed to basically increase staff awareness and knowledge about what they can recycle at home. You know, it covers things like what should and shouldn't go in your curbside bin, options for the types of materials that are recyclable but don't go in your curbside bin, and it provides a lot of tools to help people recycle better. Next slide. Also, once you join the program, your workplace will receive monthly recycling tips, mostly derived from our social media posts. Here's a sampling of those. They're entertaining, but they're also informative and educational. And you can use these in whatever format works best for your organization. So if it's social media, an internet page, you can email them out. You could even print them out and put them on a bulletin board. They're pretty flexible. Next slide. We also provide these education materials. Some, like the orange sign on the right, are designed to be placed throughout your workplace and build awareness. Others, like the flyer and the magnet, are available to you to distribute directly to your staff. So a lot of good materials. Now, kicking off a recycling program is one thing, but maintaining that program for the long haul requires continued effort and commitment on the part of your workplace. So in addition to receiving the recycling tips every month, over the long term, we can help you troubleshoot issues you may be having. We'll encourage you to take your next steps, whether it's adding something else to your recycling stream or addressing waste reduction. So we're there for the long haul, and these services are all free. Next slide. A great water quality initiative that you can get involved with coming up this fall is plogging. Some of you may not have heard of plogging. It's basically doing litter cleanup, litter pickup while you're jogging or walking. It's a virtual event. We're planning it for October 2021. It's basically consists of independent but connected trash pickups in the cities throughout the metro area. And it basically encourages a friendly competition between metro area communities. The good thing is it can be anybody. Individuals, families, businesses, community organizations are welcome to join. You can start building your team right now, and we will send out more information on this as details get lined up on that. Next slide. So MARC Environmental Services, we cover a lot of ground, as Natalie mentioned, you know, transportation, air, water, solid waste, but there are some areas we just can't cover. But we know people who can do that for you. So if your organization is interested in addressing energy, you know, like reducing energy use, switching to renewable energy, Metropolitan Energy Center is a great resource for you to get in contact with. If you're looking for ways to help your employees get engaged in the environment and the community, Bridging the Gap and the Kansas City Community Gardens are great organizations. They offer all kinds of volunteer opportunities around recycling, gardening, planting trees, wildlife restoration, and other great ways to get out, meet people, and be outside. Next slide. One last thing, we want to invite you to MARC's Regional Assembly. It's on June 11th. It's a virtual event this year, but this is basically our way of getting together to celebrate regional accomplishments from the past year from individuals and businesses and organizations in our community. If you want to register for that event, you just visit marc.org/regional assembly, and you can get signed up for that event. Next slide. That's it. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute or post them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them.
I don't see any questions in Q&A or chat. Do any of our attendees have questions?
You guys just answered all the questions.
You really did cover everything. You know, one of my questions was going to be, you know, a lot of our members are very small businesses, like 1 to 5 or 1 to 10 employees. So my question was going to be, what tips would you give them to, you know, just start a simple, sustainability program? But you answered all the questions, so thank you. You know, I know you brought up a lot of the bigger companies, but a lot of that can be scaled down, I think, to a smaller size.
Yeah,
Do
I
you
mean,
guys, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Vicki.
I was just gonna say, do you guys go out to smaller companies? You know, those smaller 1 to 5, you know, to come out and do the assessment? Are you willing to come out and do those types of things?
Yes, I mean, the Recycle More at Work, we've worked with every size of
Okay.
business and organization. So if it's a Hallmark size or if it's a mom and pop, we'll help you out. And we work across all demographics. So private business, nonprofit, local government. We work with churches, we work with schools, etc. So
Great, great. There is one question. Is it true it is best not to pump gas on a high ozone day?
That is true. Yes. And sometimes you get caught. Sometimes you didn't realize you needed gas and you need gas.
Right.
If you can wait until after 7 o'clock in the evening, that's a better time to do it. Just because ozone is an unusual pollutant. It isn't directly emitted, so it takes a little bit of time, and there are two different sets of chemicals that have to interact in the atmosphere with sunlight to create ozone. So if you fuel up early in the morning, it may seem it's still cool out, but whatever you release is available then for that chemical reaction during the rest of the day. So if you can wait till the evening, sun goes down, temperatures drop, and overnight, those chemicals that would normally form ozone have a chance to disperse. So yes, it is better if you can wait until after 7, and if you can avoid it and refuel the next day, which isn't an ozone alert day, so much the better. And it's the same thing with mowing. Mowing is another one of those things. If you can, usually that's one that you can delay a little bit more easily. But if maybe you have contractors, maybe you have somebody who's contracted to do it. If there's a way to put something into their contract or whatever else, as far as to delay it. As an example, we contact the city of Kansas City, Missouri, and all of their contracts as far as grounds maintenance, both water department, parks and rec, they all shift. If there's an ozone alert day that's anticipated, they have an operational shift that they employ. I do know it's a little more challenging if you have smaller businesses. You have a little less control.
And along that lines, what other things can we do to limit our footprint on high ozone days?
We're in interesting times right now. The ability to do more remote working, to meet virtually, we're becoming more familiar with that technology. So the less, essentially, it kind of goes back to what Natalie was talking about too, as far as transportation. That's one of the leading causes of ozone pollution. So if you can find alternative methods to either get to work or to work from satellite locations, that's all to the good. Other things, if it'd be things like avoid mowing if you can, or do it later in the evening. You have a lot of, if you're doing yard stuff, a lot of gardening tools and things that have gas-powered motors. Some of that is two-stroke, which is really high polluting. If you can, again, do some of that in the evening or wait a little bit. If you're redoing a deck, if you're sealing a deck, some of those sealants have VOCs. Those are the vapors that interact with combusted materials to create ozone. So if you go to our website, again, airqkc.org, there's a list, there's a lot of information there. I really encourage you to do it. But there's, you can click on at home, at work, and on the road. And there's different ideas associated with things that you can do to help decrease your ozone footprint.
Great, thanks, Doug.
Vicki, did you see the other question in the Q&A?
Yes, so
Okay.
is MARC involved with the recent composting initiative?
Yes, we work with composting partners like Missouri Organic, yard waste companies. The solid waste management district, we have funding available. So a lot of these businesses and organizations have applied to us for funding in the past. So we work on composting from two angles. One is all the yard waste and landscaping waste. That's one big source, and the other is food waste. And we work on both of those, and we have connections to companies that can provide those services, whether that's yard waste, landscaping waste, pickup and drop off options, as well as food waste pickup and drop off options. And those are both commercially available and at the residential level.
Great, thanks, Matt.
Mhm.
And that airqkc.org is in the chat in case any of you want to grab that. All right, I don't see any more questions. Well, thank you all for joining us today. I think this has been a great Earth Day conversation, and it helps make us all think about what we can do to help the environment for sure.